What's up, ladies and gentlemen? My name is Sativ, and in this video we're going to learn everything you need to know about Subtlety Rogue PvP in Warlords of Draenor. My goal here is to offer guidance to players who feel they might be missing something or just aren't getting enough out of their rogue in PvP. So sit back, relax, and let's take a look at the topics you will find in this video. First, we're going to talk a little bit about why people pick Subtlety and why it's played. Next, we'll talk a little bit about abilities and passives and how to effectively use them. Then we'll talk about itemization, what stats we stack, and a little bit about the 4-set. Then we'll move on to talents and glyphs, and finish up with a little bit about playstyle and some good openers. But let's head back to the top of the list with why Subtlety. For the most part, Subtlety has a significantly lower sustained damage when compared to Assassination or Combat. So what is it that draws players to playing Subtlety? The answer lies in its ability to control opponents and provide very big burst damage when using Shadow Dance or catching a re-stealth and opening on a target from stealth. Shrink it! Grow Shrink it! Go! Nice job. But it's not all about the damage. Subtlety's strength lies in its ability to provide cross CC for your team almost every single setup attempt, which allows you and your teammates to control the flow of the match and set up devastating crowd control chains. Next is a brief summary of your abilities and passives. We're going to talk about how to utilize some of your skills and how to make sure you're getting the most out of all your passives. We're going to break them down into 4 categories: defensive, control, offensive, and general. Since this is a beginner's guide, let's go ahead and get started with the general. As a rogue, you have to maintain energy and manage your combo points. As Subtlety, your Slice and Dice regenerates 8 energy per 2 seconds, and you have access to 2 passives that will generate combo points for you in various ways. First is Honor Among Thieves. This generates a combo point for the rogue whenever you or your teammates critical strike. Here you can see a Shadow Priest running away from me with freedom, but I'm still generating combo points. You can use this to help passively manage your energy by waiting for combo points to proc via Honor Amongst Thieves. Another skill to get familiar with is Fan of Knives. Currently, Fan of Knives generates a combo point per target that you hit. This, combined with Honor Amongst Thieves, can generate you 5 combo points from a single global. This includes pets, minions, anything that your Fan of Knives can hit. Just be careful that you do not break CC if you're doing 3v3 arena, because it'll surely piss off your teammates. So ideally, you want to keep Slice and Dice active at all times to help you manage your energy, and utilize your passives to help you generate combo points, to keep Rupture up, to get those Slice and Dices up, and help you smooth out your rotation. Now that we have the general stuff understood, let's go on the offensive. Outside of maintaining Slice and Dice, we need to be aware of a new passive, Sanguinary Vein, which increases damage by 30% on targets affected by Rupture, Garrote, and Hemorrhage if you have the glyph. Another passive, called Master of Subtlety, increases your damage by 15% when opening from stealth. This effect lasts 5 seconds, so you can only really get in a few attacks with this bonus. And finally, there's Find Weakness, which causes you to bypass armor on targets after you hit them with Cheap Shot, Garrote, or Ambush, causing you to deal significantly more damage to targets affected by Find Weakness. Next, we move on to a Subtlety Rogue's primary offensive cooldown, Shadow Dance. Shadow Dance grants you access to your stealth abilities, and should primarily be used as an offensive cooldown. In order to get the most out of your Shadow Dance, you want to make sure that you have Slice and Dice active, as well as access to Sanguinary Vein on your target. It's not too bad to apply Sanguinary Vein as you open with Cheap Shot, but it's best to use all your globals generating combo points and spending them on eviscerates while keeping your target stunned. Next, it's important to make sure you have a full bar of energy, so that you can spend your entire Shadow Dance using stealth skills to either control or deal damage. The control provided by Shadow Dance, alongside good coordination with your team, is what makes a Subtlety Rogue shine in Arena. Which brings us to our third category, Control. Any rogue spec can provide cross CC in the opener, but what makes a Subtlety Rogue shine is its ability to rotate Shadow Dance and Vanish offensively to provide cross CC for every setup attempt. Let's talk a little bit about the abilities that we're using to control our opponents. The first one that comes to mind is Kick. It's a very important skill that a lot of people could use some tips on. Shadow stepping a healer after he's sat a long CC chain is a good way to fill the gaps in your Diminishing Returns to continue controlling him until you or your teammates can follow up with a more potent CC. Another thing is to watch for patterns and avoid being fake cast. And if you do get faked, always have something to follow up, like a gouge or a kidney shot. Another skill is Blind, a 2-minute cooldown that can be used to disorient your target for 8 seconds. Blind can be used on targets who you know are afraid of trinketing to shut them down, and it also doesn't share Diminishing Return with Sap, so you can set up pretty good CC chains with the two. Blind is a powerful spell that, when combined with pressure, will often force enemies to trinket, which you can capitalize on later in the match. Bear in mind, Blind does share Diminishing Return with other fear effects and Cyclone. Sap is a very straightforward spell. It can only be used on people who are out of combat, and later on in the playstyles section I will talk a bit more about the skill. Outside of Blind, Sap, and Kick, we have our stuns and silences: Cheap Shot, Kidney Shot, and Garrote. I will also talk more about these skills in the playstyle section. This brings us to our final category, defensives. Rogues have a very unique defensive skill called Feint. Feint reduces incoming damage by 30% when talented with elusiveness. This skill, combined with good awareness, will provide you with a good damage reduction for all swaps, making it easier on your healer. Another important skill is Cloak of Shadows. I tend to use Cloak of Shadows as a defensive cooldown to reduce incoming damage from spellcasters. If you do end up using Cloak offensively, be sure to tell your healer so that he's aware of it and can compensate if you do get put in a bad situation. Next is Evasion. Evasion is your answer to certain spells like Incarnation, Recklessness, Rep Paladin Wings. You try to use your evasion when you know your opponent is using one of their offensive cooldowns to increase their damage. Next is your PvP trinket. You should only use this if you know 100% that you're either going to score a kill by using it, or you might die if you don't. Generally, when you're forced to trinket something in Escape, you use it with Vanish. I have a macro that will trinket and vanish if Vanish is available, because you need to be out of there as fast as possible. That being said, Vanish isn't only a defensive cooldown and can be used offensively in certain situations. That's about it for abilities and passives. If you're still having a hard time with some of these skills, be sure to take a look at my beginner's guide, Introduction to Rogue. From here we move on to itemization and then a little bit more about the 4-set piece bonus. Your stat priority as a rogue is very simple. You want to go for agility over mastery and versatility. You can pretty much ignore the rest, because if you focus on mastery, versatility, and agility, you'll be able to get mastery in every single slot. If you choose to ignore the 4-set piece bonus, you're going to get the helmet with versatility and mastery, shoulders with versatility and mastery, and gloves with haste mastery, then keep your 2-set bonus with the legs and the chest piece. If you do plan to get the 4-piece bonus, you end up getting all 4 pieces from the set except for the helmet. If you're a human rogue, you end up getting the agility passive with versatility on use. This effect lines up with your Shadow Dance, that they both have a 1-minute cooldown, so you should always use them together. If you're anything but a human rogue, you're going to want to get a PvP trinket here, while keeping this trinket. The proc trinket is a huge damage increase when it's up, so you should try and play around this a little bit. Outside of that, your gear is very straightforward. You want to make sure you're just getting mastery in every single slot, which you can do. For Subtlety, the 4-set piece bonus increases your versatility by 900 every time you feint. This will increase all damage, things like ambush, backstab, internal bleeding. Any damage that you're dealing will be increased while you have that feint bonus up, so keeping your 4-set piece bonus in 2s can actually help your damage quite a bit. I will include links to full sets of gear in the description. Let's move on to talents and glyphs. Your glyphs and talents will change depending on what you're doing and what you're facing, but generally, these are the glyphs that I roll with in 3v3 Arena. Glyph of Energy gives you more energy to work with at all times, which I feel is important to have. Glyph of Blind is important too, making sure that your blind doesn't break from bleeds, and being able to shut down enemy offensive cooldowns is potentially a really good use for blind. And Garrote. Garrote's a 1-second increase to your silence effect, and when you're playing with a mage or another high burst DPS, locking out your target for as long as possible is key. Sometimes you can choose to sub for Glyph of Cheap Shot if your silence isn't going to be as effective on your lockdown target. When it comes to glyphs, there are plenty of interesting options to look at depending on what you're doing, so I highly encourage you to buy a bunch of them and try them out. When it comes to talents, my personal playstyle is a lot more restricted. I feel Subterfuge is very, very important. It allows you to provide cross CC with your Vanish and in openers without using Shadow Dance. Subterfuge is a very important tool, and I don't think any rogue in general should do without it in organized PvP. Our next tier is a choice between Nerve Strike and Combat Readiness. Personally, I feel Nerve Strike is a good choice because it reduces damage by 25% from players after the stun effect fades, so when you're providing cross CC for your team, or just peeling in general, that damage reduction is pretty solid. As mentioned earlier in the defensives part of this video, elusiveness makes your feint reduce damage by 30%, which is something that all rogues should be using in organized PvP. While Burst of Speed might be fun to use, I feel Shadow Step still provides more utility when connecting on a target with stuns or interrupting with kick. In 2v2 play combined with Shadow Reflection, internal bleeding can actually do pretty good damage for Subtlety, but when doing 3v3 with another high burst target, I definitely would take Prey on the Weak, because that 10% damage increase when you're both connecting can be devastating. The on-demand 5 combo points from Marked for Death is a good tool to use. It can improve openers and can be lined up with your dance to help you have more burst damage in kill windows. I feel that at higher gear levels, Death from Above is doing really good damage and should be considered for Subtlety rogues. You can combine Mark for Death with Death from Above in an opener, or use the Hemorrhaging Veins glyph and provide cross CC, then hemo your kill target and open with DFA that way. All in all, Death from Above is a really solid choice right now for 3v3. When I'm doing 2v2, sometimes I'll take Shadow Reflection and Internal Bleeding, just for the overall damage to overwhelm healers. But this is a very straightforward beginner's guide, and I don't want to confuse you guys with too many options. So for the most part, this is what I'm running when I'm doing 3v3 Arena, and I rarely change from it. My glyphs generally look like this, unless I feel the stun increase will be more effective than the silence increase. I do occasionally opt to switch out blind if I plan to use blind early and don't need it to shut down offensive cooldowns like Incarnation from Feral, or potentially peel a warrior off my teammate when he's in a bad spot. All in all, you have a bit of playroom with glyphs, and you should be looking at, when you want to use blind and when you want to use Garrote over cheap shot. For the most part, it takes lots of games and it takes lots of playing to really know when which glyph will be effective. I can't explain it all here in this video. Alright, so we've talked about why people play Subtlety, we've talked about how our abilities and passives work, we've looked at our gear and how to itemize properly, and we've taken a good look at our talents and glyphs, and we have a pretty solid idea of what we want to use. Now we get down to the real information, playstyles and openers, how Subtlety is actually played. Rogues have access to a lot of CC. You can provide very good cross CC for your team in the opener, while locking down your kill target at the same time. Here I sap the kill target and cheap shot the 2 off DPS, then cheap shot the kill target. From there, I rupture, Mark for Death DFA, vanish, cheap shot, Garrote. He's done. Stunning like that in the opener allows your teammates to capitalize with other more potent CC, like Polymorphs or Cyclones. And doing so puts them in a 3v1 situation, which always is in your favor, because you control the whole flow of the match. It's you versus one target with your whole team, while their enemies sit CC. This kind of play forces enemies to use defensive cooldowns to keep themselves alive, and eventually you will set up another 3v1 situation and score a kill that way. Your main concern is being aware of diminishing returns, so that you know when you're able to full stun the off DPS and full stun the main kill target and set up another 3v1 situation. Here I use Smoke Bomb, but my druid also just blizzard in to get a bash, so this guy was definitely screwed. So many people always ask, what is a good opener? Well, in Arena, a good opener consists of providing cross CC for your team while dealing as much damage as possible. Here you can see I'm mostly holding my globals to stun. I'm saving energy so that I know I have enough for Garrotes and cheap shots. I use DFA for the original pressure and rely on auto attacks and maybe one ambush. It's important to manage your global cooldowns properly while dancing, because ideally you want to be able to stun trinkets and pool energy for stuns while your teammate connects with damage. Stay focused and always have a plan. Even if something goes wrong, you need to be able to compensate and stick to your plan, because your teammates are depending on you to help set up that cross CC and score the win. I said earlier that I would talk a bit about stuns and silences. Basically, this section was that. Cross CC for your team, lock the kill target down as long as possible, repeat. Coordinate with your team. That's the most important part. Communication is really key. Having a plan and sticking to it is what will score you the win. just spam it.
One more.
Do you have anything out? Anything else?
I am muted.
I do. I don't.
Fuck.
Yes, sir.
It's okay.
Just blind him.
Right now, blinding him. Trinket.
What?
Try and kick cast.
Nice.
They're gonna one shot me. I'm in huge trouble. Huge trouble.
See warrior? He's really low.
Yeah, touching him.
Ring right behind you, so you should be.
Awesome,
good.
awesome,
Yeah,
awesome.
they're all ring. Look at this.
I cloned you Druid. Full. No, yeah,
Dude,
yeah.
fuck.
Yeah, let's go this way.
Go where? Go, bomb
I
it.
can deep the Druid.
Bomb.
I can deep the Druid. Kill.
Please kill! Oh my god!
Shaman, I cloned Shaman.
Keep rallying.
Fucking wrathing. I got stunned.
I
Nice
sheeped him
volley.
full.
Nice.
Yeah, Rowley's gonna fall, he's dead. Shaman
Shaman's
healing him, look at him.
I cloned him.
Why is he not
Oh
dead?
my god,
Okay.
that was
Shit.
crazy. I know a lot of times when players come to these videos, they're seeking an opening rotation. They want to know exactly what buttons to press in the opener and how to deal the most damage that way. I feel that's generally not a good idea though, because sometimes people will just get too rigid in their playstyle. They'll only focus on doing that specific opener at all times, and they'll ignore other options like cross-CCing for their team in the opener. But the very basics of dealing damage is this. Keep your Slice and Dice active, have Sanguinary Vein on your target, and whenever you have Find Weakness up, your ideal goal is to be spamming as many 5-point eviscerates as possible, or ambushes if you're Shadow Dancing. That's the key to dealing damage. If you don't have any CDs like Shadow Dance, ideally what you're trying to do is just keep a 5-point Rupture up on your target. The damage from Rupture is actually pretty substantial, and yeah, it's basically all you can really do as a Subtlety Rogue outside of CDs. So going back on the things we've learned in this video, making the best use of Honor Amongst Thieves, utilizing Fan of Knives when you can, and otherwise just chasing after your target using Backstab is how you play outside of Dance. While you're dancing, you want to make sure you're using as many ambushes as possible while stunning your target and keeping them locked down. This concludes our Subtlety Rogue guide. If you've enjoyed the content that you've seen in this video and you'd like to support my channel and helping me make more, please consider checking out the donation button in the description. I'm an independent worker and I'm not sponsored by any companies or anything like that, so I just do this out of my own time. But that doesn't mean that I don't love what I do, producing fantastic content for people like you. So until next time, my friends, stay sneaky and have a fantastic day.